From the shadowy depths of the city, where justice and mystery intertwine, emerges a broadcast as daring and vigilant as the masked Avenger himself. You are tuned in to the Green Hornet Case Files, unveiling the legacy and cultural significance of one of the greatest crime fighters of all time. Now, let the adventure begin. Here are your hosts, Corey and Greg.
I think she's talking about us.
Welcome to Case File 1.0.
Is that what this is? Green Hornet Case Files.
I want to go ahead and... It's official. We're here. We're doing it.
We are. We're official.
We had teased it a little, and actually, I'm kind of happy about the response. Everything was positive.
So far, it's been extraordinarily positive. I'm Greg Martin, and...
My name is Corey Gaston.
We are glad to be here to be talking about the Green Hornet. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you've come along for the ride. We talked a little bit about this in Zero.
Right.
About how you wound up coming to the Green Hornet.
Yeah, I gave a little bit of a background, and for those of you who haven't listened, it was I'm a big Lone Ranger fan. Have been my whole life, and when I had heard of the Green Hornet, but when I found the correlation that they were relatives, and that the Green Hornet was a modern take of the Lone Ranger, then it piqued my interest. Led me to the radio show, listening to those old files and stuff, and then, boom, I discovered Bruce Lee, and I discovered the 66 show, which was incredible. And you gotta admit, that's the single coolest car. Like, it's up there with the A-Team van and Kit from Knight Rider.
Yeah, I have to say so, too. And those are things we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
I specifically want to talk about Black Beauty, and we'll reference all of those kind of things as well. And then I hit you up out of the blue and said, you want to talk about Green Hornet on a podcast?
And I said, stop me.
Please stop me. Take my wife, please. Please. Green Hornet means an awful lot to me, too. I was a kid of the late 50s, early 60s, and, of course, watched the Batman show at the time. And at that time, what was I, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, and Batman was it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Batman, Robin, the gizmos, the Egghead, the Joker, Riddler, all those kind of things. And I did not get a chance to watch Green Hornet. I think I watched one episode of Green Hornet live at the time.
I thought this went all the way back to then.
No.
Okay.
Because there was, and I need to go back in the TV guide and look to see what was programmed against Green Hornet at that time, because whatever it was a program my mother wanted to watch, and so I didn't get that opportunity to watch the show. And of course, watching the one episode that I did, and I don't remember which one it was.
I was about to ask that.
I wished I could remember. It wasn't Batman. It wasn't Bam, Pow, Zap, Zooey, Zowie.
Well, it had a more serious tone.
Absolutely, and I didn't. As a kid, you were looking for that fun thing. Mm-hmm. You didn't understand, gangsters and those kind of crimes and criminals. And so I remember having other toys and things that were Green Hornet. I remember a Color Forms, where you peel off the little plastic things and make little scenes with Color Forms. That was Green Hornet. I remember a couple of other little things that were Green Hornet at the time. Wished I had them now.
Oh, man. Well, and that merch stuff is stuff we're going to get into in a future episode. Yeah,
we will be talking about that. And it really, and I loved little bits and pieces of 66 off and on over the years when you could see it. Of course, when YouTube came along and you had the opportunity to be able to actually watch really bad transfers of the show.
They have improved.
They have gotten better. But we'll talk about, I've actually had a conversation with the people that know about why it hasn't come out yet on DVD. and we'll have that conversation
Oh,
at a
Okay.
little later point. And it really wasn't until about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that 3 years ago, that the Hornet really came roaring back into my life. And this is going to be the hard part for me.
Absolutely.
And my one and only son, at the age of 32, decided that he didn't want to be here any longer, and he took his own life. And it has been a crushing blow to me, you as well, because you and he were very good friends.
Very, very close. Yeah.
We all did another podcast together. It was a big family, and I don't have a big family. It's very small. He's my only son.
Right.
And at that point in time, I basically said, I'm done. Let my hair grow, let myself go health-wise, didn't really care anymore. And then one night, as I'm laying in bed, I'm actually reading a Green Hornet comic book, a digital version of one of the Green Hornet comic books. Might have been Kevin Smith's.
But the Kevin Phil Hester.
Yeah. And I know Phil. We're going to have Phil on the show, by the way.
Yes, sir.
And I turned to my wife in bed and I said, I think I would like to do a cosplay of the Green Hornet. And she's like, I think that's great. I think you should do it. And at that point in time, it gave me a purpose.
You know, I knew parts of that. Not all of it, obviously. But that's the thing, was watching you, I don't know how to phrase it, put grief to bed a little bit.
A little bit?
A little bit. Or use
or
it,
just set it aside.
Use it as a salve.
Yeah.
Over the top of this horrific wound. But it gave you something to hang on to, something to cling on to. And watching you do it has been really fun. Really fun. And so, I mean, it's helpful across the board, across the family, because we do have extended people in our families that
Yes.
it all crosses. But it's, I didn't quite get that I knew how you were using it to cope, but I didn't know that part of it. And that's stoked. That's awesome.
And at that point, I leaped into the fracas and finding all of the bits and pieces to make the cosplay outfit. And one outfit looked pretty good. It wasn't accurate. And then you'd fall into the realm of cosplay and nothing is perfect. So it's just going to be, what it is. And I've come out on the other side, at least at this point, kind of smiling. The grief is still there, and it always will be. It will never go away. But I have managed to circle the wagons here with the Green Hornet, and people in the Green Hornet communities have been very, very supportive of all of this. And
well, you don't half-ass anything. you when you do something, you do it, and that's again something I've always admired over the course of our friendship. But it's the thing is when you told me, you kind of said, "Hey man, I'm thinking about doing this Green Hornet cosplay thing." I looked at my wife and said, "Oh, my wife, who is a whole human being in her own right, not just known as my wife."
Yes.
She went, "Oh, that he's gonna kill it. Like,
really?
He won't be happy until it's right."
Yeah.
And I was like, I know. And then you started to kind of like, you've got this mask and that mask from this era and that era, and we both went, "Yep, see, told you."
Yep. My wife knows. My wife knows too. So it has been a journey. I dove in with, my head first, as I always do with everything. One of the very first things that I did was I picked up a copy of the incredible tome, The Green Hornet by Martin Grams and Terry Solomonson. And I hope I said that right, Solomonson. And this sucker, you could kill a goose with this sucker.
I use it for home protection.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I've had nice conversations with Martin now. We've made that connection. And Martin, I believe, I believe Martin's going to be our first guest.
Which, oh man, I am through the roof on that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's what we wanted to express multiple times that we are not experts.
Oh, no.
This is a journey that we are bringing you along for, you the listener. We are bringing you guys along as we dive into this world and learn more. Greg knows a lot, and I know enough to be dangerous in certain situations, but I'm getting the bug, man. I've been stung to be super cheesy. But I've been bit by the bug. I'm ready to rock and roll with this. And as we're going in and I'm learning more and watching more, it's so much more layered than I expected to find. Like, I know it's been around for coming up on 100 years.
Yeah.
You know, but as we're going down this rabbit hole together, like we were discussing the correlations between it and other film noir, and how the film noir and the superhero genre meshing together is what the Hornet is. And I was like, I'm a big fan of cyberpunk.
No, yeah.
And, retrofuturism
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, man, if there was a take on the Hornet that was that, and you were like, there is. It's a comic. And
yeah.
And I'm like,
Really?
and so now I can't wait to get to that. I've got to put a lot of other things in place before I get, but I need to get there. So I'm stoked, man.
I want to reiterate what you just said, Corey. We're not experts. I am not an expert on this. I do a lot of reading. I spend most of my days reading stuff about the Green Hornet, clear back to the George Trendle and Franz Stryker days and Jim Jewell. That's all part of the creation of the Hornet. We want to talk a little bit about that history, about how the whole thing kind of got started. And then as we progress through the podcast, we want to talk about the toys. We want to talk about the cars. We want to talk about some of the actors. I've been very fortunate enough to have met Van Williams and became, I won't say friends, but friendly acquaintances.
Yeah.
That's a story for another time. I have this
That's
habit.
an inside joke.
I have a terrible habit of leading into things and then just letting it hang out there for a little while. And I think what we should do at this point, and again, we're not experts. So if there's a glaring,
What's the email address?
podcast at greenhornet66.com.
If we get something wrong and you know it, let us know.
Yeah, just send us a little email saying, hey.
You dummies.
Don't use that word.
No dummies? All right.
No dummies.
Man, I was trying to come up
No
with something
dummies.
that was innocuous.
I'm sure there will be, here. Dummies.
There we go, yeah.
There you go. Get your little Hornet buzz going on there. Green Hornet harkens back to the days of, as you said in the beginning, the Lone Ranger. Mm-hmm. And WXYZ radio in Detroit.
WXYZ.
XYZ. We're both old radio guys, and I'm a way older radio guy than he is. So call letters are fun.
Yeah.
For us. We were just talking about KJCK in Junction City, Kansas. I don't
love it. I love it.
I don't know where that's going to go. But it was a radio program.
Yeah.
The Lone Ranger was a radio program that just captured the market in that 1934, 35. I forget even now. I don't have the history of the Lone Ranger behind me. But all of a sudden, it had captured the youth.
Yeah.
The kids.
Yeah.
And I remember when Clayton Moore was on television in the 50s and early 60s, I think. And I love the show.
It's funny because we got to discuss this to move forward.
Okay.
It's just the shining justice, the silver bullets, the white horse. All of that was just so entrancing for a kid. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. And Tonto's just out there being a badass. It's just fun. Like, it's good across the board. And then you hear about the Hornet, and you're like, it's almost like they took him and inversed him for a modern time. because it's dark.
Yeah.
And it's in the shadows,
Yeah.
and it brings that noir aspect as opposed to the Western aspect. But it's still the same stories. Like, at the end of the day, it's good triumphing over evil, even if it's, in a vigilante manner.
Vigilante justice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's such an attractive concept. But it's also interesting to look at it through a modern lens and looking back as vigilante justice now is a dangerous and terrifying thing to think about.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes almost, a word bandied about Batman a lot anymore is fascist, because he's imposing his rules, not the law of the land. And this is a much more innocent time for those types of things. And then it's good to harken back to that and get that vibe of hope in the face of evil.
It really is. It really is. And at a time when, law enforcement was not really technologically advanced in the 30s and 40s.
No.
Keystone Cops comes to mind. I'm sure it was better than that, but
Right.
it does hearken to that. And somebody who is an extraordinarily intelligent, well-versed, bodybuilding, whatever kind of person that could get out and extort the extortionists,
Yeah.
then that was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. The Lone Ranger had the youth audience.
Yes.
In a nutshell, it was all captured, and George Trendle said, "We need something that's a little more adult."
And that's that's the point I was about to bring up. Yeah.
Right. And George Trendle went to Fran Stryker, who was his head writer for all the Lone Rangers. And this is something I want to talk to Martin Grams about, because he's just found a whole bunch of old Lone Ranger scripts, if I remember right. And he handed him a book. Now, I don't know if you and I have talked briefly about this, the Jimmy Dale books.
Yes. Yeah. We were telling me about them.
And Trendle handed Fran Stryker a copy of Jimmy Dale, The Gray Seal. Yeah. And said, "I want another Lone Ranger like this," and handed him the Jimmy Dale books. Jimmy Dale goes back to the early 1900s, like 1910s, 1920s, somewhere in there. And is
pre-World War One.
Yeah, pre-World War One. And is as much like the Scarlet Pimpernel. And this is a huge conversation that we're going to have at some point.
This is going to come up a lot.
Yeah. And, very much Scarlet Pimpernel as, the playboy-y kind of guy, doesn't have to worry about money. And at night he puts on a mask and goes out and does whatever. And in Jimmy Dale's, the Gray Seals story, it's because he has this woman who has been sending him these covert letters that says, "Oh, such and such, you need to go do such and such at such a time." And he doesn't know who she is.
So she's the Charlie to his angels?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when he does whatever it is that he does to right the wrong, he takes out of his pocket a little tin, opens the tin, and inside is a little gray, gummy, sticky, kind of like we used to have to stick stamps to put them on envelopes.
Yeah.
And it's a little gray seal. Not like,
Which, I'm not going to lie, is what I was picturing when you first told me about
That's exactly. And I'm trying to put, okay, what does that mean? But it was, and as you read through the books, and I've read 2 or 3 of them, fortunately, my wife understands that I love antiques that way, and she's bought me some original copies
Oh, that's
of
awesome.
the
I
Jimmy
didn't know
Dale
that.
books. And when he sticks this, little seal, you have to have sound effects, on whatever it is that he sticks it on, it strikes fear in the hearts of...
Fear the Sticker Man.
It's the Gray Seal.
Which, it's goofy. That's super goofy.
It kind of is, but
it's wonderful, too, at the same
you
time.
also have to understand it's the early 1900s.
Right.
And there is no such thing as Batman yet. Batman won't come along for years yet.
Decades.
Decades.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that we need to, I mean, the Hornet predates that.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Lone Ranger predates
Yeah.
that. The Shadow predates the Batman, Superman,
The Phantom.
Wonder Woman, the Phantom. Scarlet Pimpernel is kind of, in a lot of ways, the beginning. There's some argument about that there was some things before the Scarlet Pimpernel, but if you've ever watched or read Scarlet Pimpernel, it has all those same kind of earmarks to it.
Yeah, yeah.
That vigilante,
Which, it's funny because, again, apropos of the modern lens, is as we've gotten where we are now in the world, the Marvel movie, the epic, over-the-top superhero film, everybody is fatigued by it at this point. It's gotten too big. It's all the sky beam and intergalactic blah, 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 blah. Not that I have any problem with any of that. I love it. I really do. But
don't mention AI to Corey, okay?
Anyway, but what we long for as a culture is those street level heroes, those, and again using modern, the Daredevils, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, not the Avengers Spider-Man, but the guy on the streets protecting his neighborhood, and that's what we've got in these old pulp heroes. I mean, not that the adventures could get big. They could get very big. But at the same time, at the base level, it was small crime-fighting stories that ended with, good versus evil every time. But on a base level that you could take in and relate to, as opposed to Thanos wiping out half the universe with a snap.
Right. And for the most part, these were normal, everyday human beings who maybe had a little bit of something extra, like in the case of the Shadow,
or money.
Or money. A lot of money. A lot of money, honey.
Brit was not poor.
Brit was not poor. Brit was in a position of power.
Yeah.
My first jobs in the world, besides mowing lawns, was working for the local newspaper office.
Yeah.
And local newspaper office, I grew up in a town of 500 people, so it's not like this was massive. It was a weekly newspaper. My mother happened to be the...
You went in and got it from Jeff and then took it out and threw it on a lawn and went home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My mother was the secretary, kind of news gatherer-y kind of person who also wrote a weekly column called Off the Cuff.
Okay.
With Phyllis. And the editor of the newspaper was also the guy who set all the type. All the stories were done back on a linotype machine. It was all hand set. The headlines and everything were all hand set with the individual tiles. I was being taught how to do that. I wrote a column about the local high school, high school news, and then I was the press guy.
Oh, cool.
That was my, once a week for about 3 hours, I would stand on top of one of these giant old roll-type presses and feed a sheet of paper into it at a time.
At a time. Oh, my
500
goodness.
sheets for one side, turn it over, 500 sheets for the other side.
And you never got ink on your hands. It was incredible.
It was incredible. So I have this feeling, this connection to that storied person of Britt Reed being, the editor of a newspaper.
So that's yet another part of the story that I always enjoyed, because I grew up. I was a sickly kid. I didn't go out a lot, and my parents were older, and so I had a lot of interaction with, even for the time, older media. But I was like, the newspaper man was the coolest, because Clark Kent was a newspaper man.
Yes, he was.
Britt Reed was a newspaper man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things that I always found really, really cool. And then I saw Citizen Kane and was like, oh, William Randolph Hearst is horrible. But at the same time, the newspaper man, the journalist of that era, was a hero still, because they were trying to make you smarter, informed about your world. Nowadays, it's very manipulative. Not that it wasn't manipulative at that time, but the base guy out there doing the job, the guy with the press card in his hat, chain smoking cigarettes, all the way up to, well, one of my favorite people of all time, Hunter S. Thompson. The journalist is the guy who goes out and insinuates himself into the story and brings you back the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a heroic thing in and of itself. Again, something I feel like we're missing now. So all of these things coming back up by looking back is pretty cool.
It is. Radio show started in 1936 and was, actually a very long-running radio series through the 30s and 40s. Into the 40s, then, they all of a sudden decided that it was time to bring it to the mass media of motion pictures.
And the first run of the comics.
And the first run of the comics was in the 40s. 2 movie serials. Then in the 60s, we wound up getting, real mass media with the television show with Bruce Lee and Van Williams. And then lots more comics.
Lots more
comics. I was just blown away by the list of comics. I think I have a lot of them. But I was blown away by that list of.
I knew about the golden era.
Mm-hmm.
The
Gold Key era.
Yeah,
some of those.
All of that's but the now comics,
mm-hmm.
the 80s and 90s, I completely missed. I got back into the Hornet with the Kevin Smith, Phil Hester run.
Oh, sure.
And I got into that. I'm a Kevin Smith fan, but I had just read Matt Wagner's Lone Ranger
series
for Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also a Zorro run around that time. And I was like, oh, they're just keeping all this going. It's wonderful. And Dynamite knocked it out of the park. They let them just go haywire with it. The Kevin Smith's Green Hornet is phenomenal. And it's branched off. There was a Kato.
Yeah, the Kato off of it, yeah.
There was, what was the name of the cyberpunk one, the futuristic one?
There was like something of the Scorpion or something. I don't know the name off the top of my head.
But they ran with it. They went mm-hmm. It went a lot and it was way more popular. And I was working at a comic book store when it came out, and it was far more popular than I would have expected. And that's when I started having those conversations about the street level. People yearning for those stories again. And I can't thank Dynamite enough for bringing all those pulp things back,
Well, then they started doing some crosses, which were kind of nice. There's the Green Hornet and the Shadow. There's a Green Hornet Batman comic in addition to the 66 TV series where it was used as a vehicle to try and boost numbers on the Green Hornet. The Green Hornet and the Spirit is one of the Dynamite comics.
The Will Eisner Spirit?
The Will Eisner Spirit, if I remember right. So there's been a lot of different variations of the Hornet over the years. And then, of course, we get to the 2011 film, which, I can't say completely that I hate the film.
You have said that multiple times. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. That is fair. That is fair. I have said how much I hate the film.
But you've come around on aspects of it.
There are some parts of the film that are just totally enduring, and they nailed so many bits and pieces of it just absolutely perfectly. And I can't really hate it anymore. And I've seen the film probably half a dozen times because of those aspects. I will put up with what I see is Seth Rogen making fun of my favorite character.
Right.
To watch some of these other aspects of it. And now, of course, we are sitting and discussing with, is it Amazia? I'm sure you guys will let me know who is in the process of discussing, but it's been in the work for like 2 or 3 years, a new movie that is being hopefully helmed by, and now the name is going to completely and totally escape me. I'll have to look it up.
And again, anybody listening,
podcast
there at greenhornet66.com.
And a script is being written, and it's in development. It is in development. And at one point in time, and again, I'm getting older in my years, and so certain things are not flying into my brain. Captain Kirk remake, actor. Chris Pine, name has been attached to the film project as a potential Britt Reed. And I am not totally on board with that from just my perspective, but
have you seen the D&D movie?
Yes.
I think he can do it because he can bring a little levity to it, but he can be really, really cool.
And I'm reaching out to some people that hopefully we can get somebody in that can maybe talk a little more along the lines of what might
be in the works.
For it. Yes. Did you look it up?
I'm looking it up. It's talking about Chris Pine, but I was trying to find the
director. That's it, and you'll know the director as soon as you
Lee
find
Wanell.
Lee Wanell.
Yeah. That did Invisible Man recently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was an awesome remake. It was really good.
Yeah, the writer that's attached to it, David Kipp.
Oh, okay.
David has so many: Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, Stir of Echoes, Indiana Jones.
I was just talking about Stir of Echoes like 2 days ago.
Just so many great scripts. And he's of an age that would get it.
Right.
The Green Hornet. He would get it.
And again, and this is, obviously we're hoping our audience is people who are as hardcore into it as you are. But when we're coming at this, like, it needs to be taken seriously. It can have camp. It can have fun. But it's not the 66 Batman. That's not what we're doing.
No.
And I think that's kind of where the Seth Rogen one went off the rails, is Rogen brought Rogen to it.
Yeah, and I think that was wrong in so many ways, but that was Rogen.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was trying to be that kind of a character. And when you look back, and we all look back to the 66 with Van and Bruce, and in a lot of cases, I look even further back. I look at, and I don't think you knew this, I think I enlightened you on the 1940s film version with Gordon Jones.
The serials.
Holy
and mackerel.
Kato in the serials was Key Luke, who was number one son from the old Charlie Chan series, and then for those of us of a certain age, was Master Po. Was it Master Po on
Kung Fu?
Kung Fu.
Yeah.
The blind,
Yeah, and I didn't. You turned me on to all of that. When you sent those, you sent some of them to me to watch, and I've seen about 4 of them now. Mm-hmm. It's might be my favorite take on it so far. Like, I love them. They're really, really, really good. If you haven't seen them, go out of your way to find the old movie serials, because they're just killer.
Yeah, they're out there. They're out there. You can find them on YouTube. You can find pretty much anything you want on YouTube, as well as the 66 show, and find out what it was all about. There were 2 versions, 2 serials. One was done in 40, one was done in 41. And I'm going to make a statement here. I'm going to make a statement that I may just get myself in trouble for. That
podcast at greenhornet66.com.
I believe it was a 1937 Lincoln Zephyr that was used as the original Black Beauty. And my statement is, I think it's a better Black Beauty than the 66 Chrysler Imperial. Okay,
I don't
podcast know.
At I know you can't see me, but my jaw was just on the floor. And here's the thing: is it's rad. It's real rad.
It really is. It really is.
But
All right. I get that. I get that. All right. It's Green Hornet Case Files. Greg Martin, Corey Gaston, and I think for episode 1, I think we're at a place where we can probably bring things kind of to a close, at least for this go-around. I could talk about this all night long.
Well, we will, but we're just going to stretch it out over several episodes.
I think so. Again, I have had a lot of support and love from the Green Hornet fans, all the Facebook posts. Thank you so much for all your support. Those of you that follow 66 Batman Forum and the Green Hornet side of that. My new friends over there of Scott and Ben, who are the forum admins, have been very supportive of what we're doing here, and I appreciate that. I've thrown it out to a lot of people saying, if you know of anybody who would be considered an expert in some of this, we'll be in touch with them.
Right.
And we have been in touch with a lot of people that have just jumped on board.
And the list of people that you sent me that said, yeah, hey, I'll come talk. I'm so excited to share it with everybody. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we have like an actress who was on, one of the shows. I have a guy who owns a Black Beauty.
Screen used, right? Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Some of the authors of some of the more recent books that Moonstone put out. And I'm going to give a big shout out to the folks at Moonstone for giving me some direction on some of this stuff. And again, Martin Graham's going to be probably our first guest on the show. And I mentioned early on Phil Hester, who did a lot of the writing and the artwork and so forth on the Kevin Smith. I've known Phil.
And he took over after Kevin dropped off, right? Yeah.
He wrote a lot of those. I've known Phil from the days that he was doing some work with Roddenberry folks, and that's another long story that we'll get into at some point in time. And
be on the lookout for another show.
You just never know. But we have so many things we want to talk about, and again, we want to talk about the toys. I want to do an episode on just the music alone that goes along with that, and there's just too much to get into one episode. So.
No. Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're off and running. And I want to take this chance to say thank you for including me. I appreciate it more than you know. I am the type of person who can't shut up, so the opportunity to talk makes me happy. And I also am looking forward to diving in with this community as well and getting to know all these people. It's going to be a wild ride. I'm excited.
That's great folks out there, and I appreciate all of you. Podcast at greenhornet66.com. If you go to the website, greenhornet66.com, it's my cosplay site. So if you have some weird fetish desire to see me in a Green Hornet outfit.
Fetish was an interesting choice of words there, brother.
Some people call cosplay a fetish.
Fair enough. I'm not going to argue with it.
But there's also a link then to the page that's specifically the podcast, and I've been going out and throwing it on all the podcast outlets that I can find. And if you don't find it on one, send me an email, podcast@greenhornet66.com, and I will see about getting it linked up there.
Can I get an email address too at the website that's Fat Cato?
No.
Okay.
No. It's too many letters. Maybe we'll talk about that. How much cash you got on you?
Fat Cato at greenhornet66.com.
I'll run right home and put that one in the works. All right, it is the Green Hornet Case Files. I'm Greg Martin.
No, I'm Corey Gaston.
Let's roll.
As the night envelops the city once more, our journey through the hidden alleys of history and valor comes to a close. You've been riding shotgun with the Green Hornet Case Files, where the echoes of the past meet the voices of the present. Tune in again for the next thrilling adventure where shadows speak, secrets unfold, and the legacy of the Green Hornet continues to inspire. The Green Hornet Case Files is a Grail Productions podcast. The Green Hornet is owned exclusively by Green Hornet, Inc. Until next time, vigilant listeners, keep your wits sharp and your spirit unbreakable.